Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Added Time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted in today's video on a variety of topics surrounding Chelsea. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit that like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. So let's get into your questions. Firstly here from Fifi, who asked, Marina said Malang Sarr is a tremendous prospect and he'll be going out on loan. Do you see him breaking into the first team after a successful loan spell in the near future with the likes of Tomori, Mwamba and Gurhi all having their eyes set on that spot? It's going to be difficult, I'm sure, for Malang Sarr, but I feel that overall the transfer makes a lot of sense. I think for Chelsea, it's low risk, it's high reward. I think it's a win-win situation for Chelsea because they either get a player who's really good, turns out to develop really well on loan and comes back into the first team and saves the club a lot of money in a transfer fee, which is good. Or if he doesn't fit in, Chelsea make a profit on him. So I think in both cases, I think it's a good thing for Chelsea. It's going to be difficult because there are players there, as you mentioned, for Kairo Tomori, Mwamba. We don't know how he's going to develop. I mean, he'll probably get a loan or maybe stay in the academy. He's a lot younger than those other players. Mark Gurhi, of course, staying on loan to Swansea this season. I think that's a really good move for him. I think he'll develop really well. And I was really impressed with Mark Gurhi when I saw him in little spells last season in the League Cup for Chelsea. But it's good to have options. It's good that Chelsea have players there who can develop at different rates and potentially solve our defensive issues in the future. Aravinth asked, do you think that the future of Ruben is up in the air with the introduction of Kai Havertz? Maybe. This could be a make or break season for Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Considering his fitness as well, I think he's probably one big injury away from his Chelsea career sort of coming to an end, or at least, you know, getting to that stage where you think that he's never going to become that top player that we hope he can be. I hope the introduction of Kai Havertz spurs a lot of players on. I hope it does the other thing. I hope it raises competition like these other signings are. I don't think you necessarily have to think of it as a negative. I think because of the amount of games Chelsea are hoping to play and will be playing this season, I think there's going to be a lot of options for Frank to choose from. I think a lot of players are going to get minutes. So I think Ruben, as he started that game against Brighton yesterday in the pre-season friendly, I think we'll see himself as a player that can develop again this season, challenge himself, try and get into that first team, impress Frank Lampard, because Frank has proved, and we're going to have to see this, of course, with new signings coming in, it's a meritocracy. If you earn your spot in training, he will give you an opportunity in the first team. So I hope it spurs on Ruben. But yeah, it's Chelsea. It's intense pressure. If you want to be in the first team, you have to be good enough. And I hope Ruben Loftus-Cheek rises to the challenge of Kai Havertz coming in to that midfield role. Tan's video asked, from what I've observed recently, coaches with a system have been successful in winning leagues, but coaches with certain amounts of pragmatism have been doing better in the Champions League. I don't know if Liverpool falls into this. I find Frank having a bit of both aspects. What are your thoughts? I think that's an interesting observation, to be honest. It's interesting to me how in the Premier League it's very much evolved now to maybe, especially at the top of the game now, having a more defined philosophy. It's, you know, it's an overused word at this point, but, you know, a system that you believe in, a plan A, making plan A better. I think that's been something that's so dominant now in the Premier League, especially if you want to be at the top level, and that is mostly being an attacking team. I think in terms of the Champions League, of course, it's majorly different because it's a knockout competition, especially when you get to those last rounds, and it's mostly about maybe those percentages and who you get in the draw. I think sometimes the pressure of it, the intense pressure of the Champions League, it's such a different animal to the Premier League, which is a constant week in, week out slog, and it's about being consistent over a period of time. I think that you mentioned Jurgen Klopp there, and I think you've seen Klopp where he very much started with very much fixing the attack of Liverpool, making the attack of Liverpool the most dangerous in the Premier League and in Europe, of course. And it almost worked his way back to fix the defence, if you think about it. So by the time, you know, Liverpool, of course, won the league, they became a lot more solid defensively, won games more by one goal. But I think that was a lot of the work that Klopp had done to make that front three so ferocious and so good in front of goal. And I wonder if Frank will do the same. I do agree with you. I think he uses the word flexible. Now, I don't think that means defensive all the time. I think sometimes he maybe will be defensive, but I think at the heart of what Frank Lampard wants to do, I think he wants to be a progressive manager. I think he wants to set out Chelsea to attack and be on the front foot of games, nearly all games, because Chelsea have the ability to do that. How that matches with Champions League and Premier League, I think in the Premier League, yeah, I think systems are a lot more important. Maybe in the Champions League on one game or you know, a knockout tie, you can sort of be a little bit more pragmatic on that night. But as I saw with Pep Guardiola against Lyon recently, he changes things, he overthinks things. I think a lot of the time, I think Pep Guardiola has stumbled because he overthinks things, maybe thinks about the opposition a bit too much rather than sticking to what's worked for Manchester City in the Premier League. I think that dynamic is really interesting, and it's going to be interesting in relation to Frank Lampard, how he deals with that, because I think Chelsea still need to move in the direction they have been, which is being more attacking and progressive. But good point. I do think it's an interesting topic to discuss. Sambav asks, if you could buy only one more player, Declan Rice or a new goalkeeper, which one would you prefer this summer? I'm going to say a goalkeeper, because I think Chelsea really need to freshen up that area. I spoke about Edouard Mendy in my video yesterday, Let's Talk Chelsea. If you haven't seen it, please go and check it out, because it seems like Chelsea are very serious now submitting bids for that goalkeeper, and it seems like maybe their first choice target this summer, at least a target they feel they can get realistically. Declan Rice, I've spoken a lot on the channel. I think he's a very good player. I think Chelsea will eventually get him. I think it's one of those transfers that almost destined to happen unless another big team comes in for him and maybe they sway his mind in the end. I just think that maybe this summer is a stretch too far, and I don't think it's a priority position anymore for me. I think that goalkeeper is much more important for Chelsea. I think, you know, having a new face there, refreshing that area to maybe add some more solidity and confidence to that back line, I think is massive for Frank Lampard. He does not trust Kepa anymore, and especially Caballero as well with his age. Chelsea need to go out and sign a goalkeeper. So yeah, I'm going to go with goalkeeper instead of Declan Rice. Brendan Coyle asks, which player are you most looking forward to seeing this season? That is a difficult question. There are so many exciting players this year, current players, and of course the new signings as well, to see how they cope in the system, to see how they can add to Chelsea's game next season and improve it. Christian Pulisic is probably the first name that comes to mind, so it isn't one of the new signings. I think based on what I saw last year, how exhilarating it was to watch Christian Pulisic play football, I'm really hoping he has another season where he gets even better. I think the players he's going to be playing with in attack, I think are only going to help him. Behind that, I'm interested to see how Ben Chilwell improves our left-back role and seeing how that works with, especially in attacking areas and defensively as well. And then maybe just behind that, I think seeing Hakim Ziyech and Timo Werner link up, I think that's going to be really exciting over the season. So yeah, I mean, Kai Havertz as well, Mason Mount, how Frank deals with defence. I think there's a lot of exciting aspects for the season, especially in an attacking sense. So it's a difficult question to just give you one name, but I think Christian Pulisic, just based on what he did last season, in my opinion. Up the Chelsea asks, do you think, given the game against Brighton, that Havertz will be a false nine? Not really. I mean, I think that it's very difficult to judge, you know, what Frank is going to do on the opening game of the season or for the whole of the 2021 season just based on a preseason friendly and based on a personnel he had. He didn't even have Havertz available for that game because he wasn't a Chelsea player yet. So I think it's difficult. He has that ability, absolutely, to do that flexibility. We know Kai Havertz can play in that area. He can play as a right wing as well. You know, he can play as an attacking midfielder, a central midfielder too. Potentially, I think that could be something Frank could try out. I don't think he'll do it a lot because I actually think Frank's got a lot of options in that area to rely on. Timo Werner, Olivier Giroud, Tammy Abraham. So I don't think maybe an injury crisis could make Frank Lampard do that in a certain game. I don't think that would be his main position, in my opinion. Just looking at the squad, the strength of it in certain areas, I think he'll predominantly play maybe on the right or in a central midfield role, which I think will be predominantly where he plays. But that false nine thing is interesting because there were some people at Nini FC, I'd definitely give him credit for this, talking about in the aftermath of the Brighton friendly, how Werner was almost playing as a false nine and discussing that and theorising about that. So I think that's an exciting thing to think about, flexibility in attacking areas. So many options this season for sure. Akash asks, how long will it take for Ziyech to adapt to the physicality of the Premier League? It's a difficult one to answer, to be honest, because he may suffer injuries in his first season at Chelsea that may force him to bulk up. We saw this with Eden Hazard, if you remember. Eden Hazard was at an earlier age in his career, but Hazard had to do that, and I think Mourinho was very much integral to that development in Hazard to very much get him tougher to the Premier League, and physicality wise it really helped him out in the end. Ziyech, I think if I was to compare Ziyech and Werner, I think Werner may adapt a little bit more quickly because of the pace and intensity of the Bundesliga being a little bit closer to the pace and intensity of the Premier League rather than the Eredivisie to the Premier League. The quality as well of levels of teams you're playing, I think as well. I think Ziyech will overcome that because of his natural quality and ability on the ball. I just think he will. I think there'll be so many occasions where no matter how physical teams try and get up against him, you know, Burnley, Brighton, other teams like that, I think his quality will just go over that. I think you saw that in the end with Eden Hazard. I mean, of course, I'm not, you know, saying that Ziyech will be as good as Eden Hazard, but I think that Ziyech, just the type of player he is, I think will find space in the end for Chelsea, and I think he'll hopefully overcome that and get more confident in the league. It may take him a little bit, so I hope fans are patient with that and understanding of that for all of these new players, especially ones coming from other leagues, because that's always a thing, especially for attacking players, because they will try and target and kick him early on, and it's about Ziyech's character and strength to overcome that, like other wingers have in the past. And finally, Havertz asks, do you think we should be keeping Ethan Ampadu at least until January, considering both Gilmour and Kante have had injury concerns? I know there's been talks of Rice lately, but don't you think Ethan can play that role as well? Also, congrats on 13k, mate. Way to go. Thank you so much for that. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you here. I think Ethan Ampadu should be kept until January. Of course, considering maybe his game time, if he doesn't get a lot of game time, the club may consider things, and think Frank as well. Think maybe for his development, go out on loan for the second half of the season. I really want to see Ethan Ampadu kept. You know, if we can't get Declan Rice, I think he's a really, really good player to rotate. I think Ampadu could get about 20 to 25 appearances this season. If Kante's fitness problems, which you've addressed and also I've addressed in videos recently, it is a concern, and it should be a concern to Chelsea, just as a risk, you know, trying to think of not overworking Kante, which maybe we did a few times last season, and trying to keep him as fit as possible. He will be the main starter if he remains fit, but I think Ampadu, it really is, I think, the time for him potentially to break through into that role, and I think this season could be it. Billy Gilmour as well. I mean, that's a thing you will probably forget about Billy Gilmour until he comes back in November, and maybe that could be another situation where Gilmour and Ampadu, it may be a decision for both of them who goes out on loan, because I don't think you could have both of those players, given their age and quality and potential, to both be sitting on Chelsea's bench. I don't think that's good for them, and then potentially down the line you're thinking of who's actually going to stay at Chelsea, so there could be a battle on there for sure. But I agree with you, Ethan Ampadu I think should be kept and given a chance as rotation with N'Golo Kante this season. But that is it for this edition of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.